We're not natural rule followers. We're natural born problem solvers. G'day Teacher Geeks. In this video, I want to share a little tweak I made a few years ago, and I think it's made the world of difference in my lesson plans. I know I enjoy teaching the lessons more, and I think my students are more engaged too. Well, learning targets, learning outcomes, specific learning outcomes, learning intentions, whatever you want to call them, right? That thing we learn the first day of teacher school where we figure out how do we write the things we want to teach, right? That's what it is. Every good lesson has very specific learning intentions, learning targets, the stuff that we want to be able to teach. I know that's the first thing I do. If I'm trying to plan a lesson, I have to first figure out, well, what is it I want to teach these kids? And I have to figure out exactly the phrasing, right? We get all those verbs: define, describe, explain, analyze, understand, evaluate, synthesize. And these are what often go into our learning targets. And for me, for years, that's how I did it, right? That's how I learned it on day one, and I did it for 10 years. Until recently, I just made a switch. I made a real small switch, but it made a really big difference. But let me just go back a little bit to the idea of these verbs. You know, they underline what's in Bloom's, but I think there's a lot of problems with Bloom's. That's my next video. Hit subscribe and you'll get the notification. But there's a lot of problems with Bloom's. And also in the IB, these command terms, these verbs, explain, discuss, analyze, in IB psychology at least, they're not important. They're perceived to be important. I call them command germs. They've infected everything that we do, but actually we can do away with them and be so much happier. Right, okay, let me stop beating around the bush. What did I do? I swapped from commands to questions. So I stopped saying define, and I started saying what is. To me, that makes the world of difference. We're not natural rule followers. We're natural born problem solvers. We don't want to walk into somewhere, into a classroom or anywhere and be told, today you're going to do this. Why not? Today we're going to discover this. And I don't think that's too wishy-washy, airy-fairy. It makes perfect sense to me. So all of my questions essentially follow three levels, right? What is, how and why, but. That's it, right? So very basic what is, like you learn a particular thing. And in my lesson plans, you'll see them. These are the green levels, surface level learning. Then we have how and why. We're trying to make some connection. Then we go but, and then we think critically about what we've just learned. Real simple. Now for me, that's infinitely more engaging and enticing than the explain, define, analyze. No thanks. Also, I find that I'm actually now forced to try to write interesting questions, and the phrasing of the questions becomes really important. At least for me it does, because I'm thinking, is that really what I want my students to learn, and how can I phrase this in a way that's most interesting? And I also have to figure out the what is needs to be connected to the how and why, and I have to make sure that I have some nice alignment there. The benefit of these questions also is now my tests are written for me. We get to the end of the unit, I know exactly what the tests are going to be because I've written the 3 questions for every lesson all throughout that unit. Better yet, my students know exactly what the test questions are going to be. They've read them every lesson. They're right there at the top of their workbooks. Do these questions go on the board at the beginning of every lesson? No. No, I don't believe in putting outcomes on the board that sit there for the whole lesson. I used to, now I don't, right? There's pretty good reasons why I don't think we should do that. One being cognitive load, and the other being if my students have them in their workbook, they don't need it up there on the board. It just creates white noise. I do present the question, the guiding question, the key question, that's the how and why at the beginning of the class. So that's my big tip. I would say try taking out the commands and swapping them for questions. And I'll show you here a couple of examples in my unit plans and my workbooks, how I just phrase these in 3 levels. Now, if you're an IB psychology teacher, you're familiar with my materials, then you've seen all this before. There's a very clear distinction between what makes a green from an orange to a red, and I'm going to explain that in future lessons. And I think this was massive in my teaching, and it's a real cornerstone of what I'm doing, and it's a cornerstone of my thematic model of education, which I'm slowly drip feeding out in these videos. All right, I'll stop rambling because in the next video I'm going to explain Bloom's and the problem with Bloom's, but even better yet, the solution to Bloom's, because complaining about something without offering a solution is just moaning, and I don't want to moan in these videos. I want to provide practical strategies. So there it is. I think the best strategy is let's get rid of those verbs and let's change our outcomes to questions. Suddenly we're going to be worried and more focused on making interesting and directly relevant content and lessons for our students. Hope that was helpful. And again, I hope that was helpful. I will see you. I won't see you. How do I end these videos? It's 4:38 a.m. on a Saturday morning, just so you know. I found that I've got this 3 or 4 hour window between about 3 or 4 a.m. to 7, 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. That's when I'm going to do these videos. So if I'm not firing on all cylinders, that's why. Why am I wearing a suit and tie at 4:38? Well, story for another day. What did I say? I am a teacher geek.